There are a few things about menopause that I really wish someone had told me earlier. I wish there had been someone who took the time to explain it the way an informed mum does, or an older friend. The same way many of us were spoken to about the birds and the bees. Some of us were lucky. We got the talk and then the book. Others were just handed the book. And some of us got nothing at all. No book, no conversation, just silence. Left to figure out puberty on our own. I feel this is how many of us are still experiencing the topic of menopause. I still remember a sleepover with my best friend. We pulled out this book, What Girls Need to Know by Dr. Jan van Alphen. We sat there for hours, giggles of disgust, wide eyes, and oh no, I'll never do that. That was awkward, uncomfortable, but at least it was something. Menopause, though. It was never part of the conversation. Not once. No book. No girls' night paging through anything together. No sharing stories or warnings or this might happen to you. Just silence. That silence kept me in the dark for years. It left me believing something was deeply wrong with me and that this was just how life was going to be now. I was 38 when everything stopped working the way it should have. What I didn't know at the time was that perimenopause had already been creeping in slowly from around the age of 28. I only discovered much later that my history of endometriosis as a teenager played a big role in how early all of this started. Before we go any deeper, I want to tell you about the day everything changed for me, for my husband, for my children. I was in the kitchen. My son was upstairs playing music, as teenagers do, but the sound got under my skin, into my bones. It drilled holes in my brain. It made my blood boil. I shouted for him to turn it down. He did, but it didn't help. It still felt as loud as standing next to a speaker in a nightclub. Something in me shifted. I grabbed the closest thing I could find and I threw it as hard as I could onto the floor. And then I froze. I was so shocked at myself, and then I cried. Because honestly, I didn't know what just happened. I told myself it must be PMS. My period hadn't arrived for weeks, but not PMS like I knew it. This was PMS on steroids. So I jumped to the only explanation that made sense to me. I must be pregnant. That evening, sitting around the dinner table, I told my husband and the kids that I thought there might be a baby coming. My husband went pale. My daughter was excited and started planning to move a crib into a bedroom. My son dropped his fork, his eyes wide and riddled with shock, and said, "Are you still doing it?" We laughed and cried at the same time. I took a pregnancy test. It was negative. I went to the doctor and I was told I was too young not to be having periods. I was given medication to kickstart everything again. I felt relieved, back on track, very relieved that I wasn't going to have a baby at 39. At that point, my kids were 13 and 17. Looking back now, my mood started shifting around the age of 28. I felt low, flat, disconnected. I was put on antidepressants because I showed signs of depression. In my 30s, my periods became lighter and shorter, but they were still regular, so I didn't think much of it. I stayed on antidepressants for more or less 7 years. And during that time, I didn't notice any other signs of perimenopause because the medication numbed everything. My emotions were dulled. I was disconnected from my body. I ignored the weight gain. I ignored the exhaustion. I made peace with the idea that this was depression and that this was simply my life now. By 37, I stopped taking the antidepressants because the side effects were so severe. It started showing up in skin rashes and a nervous system issue. By the time I was 38, I was already in full-blown menopause. I just didn't know it yet. The first thing I wish I'd been told is that menopause doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in. through mood changes you can't explain, through exhaustion that rest doesn't fix, through feeling emotionally exposed in ways that surprise you. You don't wake up one day and think, oh, this is menopause. You wake up thinking, what the hell is happening to me? The second thing I wish I'd known is that menopause isn't just about hormones. Yes, hormones matter, but what really changes is how your whole system responds to life and to the people around you. Things you used to tolerate, noise, pressure, conflict, stress, suddenly feels louder, sharper, more triggering. Not because you've become difficult, but because your internal buffering has changed. And no one explains that part. I was lucky in one very important way. I have a husband who knows me deeply. We met when I was only 15. I married him at 20. By 22, we were planning our family. Because of my endometriosis, we were told not to wait. That if we wanted children, we should try sooner rather than later. Many women struggle with infertility when endometriosis is part of the picture. I was put on fertility treatment and fell pregnant easily, something I'm still deeply grateful for. After that dinner table conversation I mentioned earlier, the one where I thought might be pregnant, my husband quietly said something that changed everything. He said we needed to look into menopause. That was the first time it really crossed my mind because not even my doctor mentioned this before, and I've been with him several times during this whole process. I remember feeling almost curious but also confused. Menopause in my head was something that happened when you were around 60, not 38. I still don't quite know how he made the connection, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that he did. He could see that things were changing, not just emotionally for me, but between us. The way I responded, the way I spoke, the way tension showed up in our home, things I would normally swallow, stay quiet about, or smooth over started coming out of my mouth, and not gently. He told me later that he didn't recognize me anymore. And that hurt because I didn't recognize myself either. At that point, the changes weren't physical yet. Those only became noticeable in my mid-40s. This was all internal, emotional, relational, and none of us had a language for what was happening. I realized I was changing. The old me left without saying goodbye, and a new me arrived without any announcement. Whether we were ready or not, she moved in and took over. As a family, we had to rebuild our lives around someone we loved but not like at the moment. She had the same face, but her voice was different. We needed time to get to know her, but she didn't make that easy for any of us. It was the same wrapping, but the package inside had changed. Menopause can make you doubt yourself, your reactions, your emotions, your decisions, your confidence, your nurturing ability, and your patience with your kids. Your relationships, not just at home, but with extended family, work, and friends too. You start questioning your abilities, your mind, your body, and the version of you that used to feel familiar. Some of your self-trust starts to drift away. That gut feeling that once warned you, guided you, kept you steady was missing. And I wish someone had said to me, you're not losing yourself, you're recalibrating. That doubt isn't failure, and it isn't the end. It's transition. Looking back now, I can see this clearly. I wasn't doing menopause badly. I was moving through something I had never been prepared for. No map, no language, no context. Once I stopped judging myself for how it felt and stopped taking on other people's judgment of my reactions, once I stopped trying to push through it or explain it away, I could finally meet myself where I was. It was not easy though, but it changed everything. How I related to my body, how I understood my emotions, how I held this stage of my life. not with fear, well, maybe a little, but with more honesty and a little more compassion. If no one ever sat you down and explained menopause in a way that actually made sense, that's not your fault. And I hope that in some small way, I can be that someone for you now. This space exists because we deserved better conversations than silence, dismissal, or being told just to cope. You're not alone in this. If this helped put words to something you're being feeling, then you're exactly where you need to be. My name is Marley, and this is how I navigate menopause.